Get a real job. You're never going to make money as a musician. Hey guys, this is Will. Welcome to the From Studio Stage podcast. Today we're talking about how to make money with Ableton Live. Now, this is not about some get-rich-quick scheme. It's about how to make it in the music industry in different roles, different various shapes and forms. And I want to show you how you can actually make money while using Ableton Live. So I think the myth of the starving artist doesn't have to be reality, right? You can be someone that claims to get by only creating your art, and that's the only thing that can sustain you. But I've personally found it's hard to pay your electric bill with your creativity unless that creativity can make you money in some form or fashion. So today's simple. I want to talk about 4 different ways that I know of that either I'm living or friends of mine that are making money with Ableton Live doing these 4 different things. It's going to be short. It's going to be sweet. So let's get to the point. Very first way, this is the first thing that popped in my mind. How can you make money with Ableton Live? You could do it as a producer. So I think of someone who writes their own songs or writes songs for other people or produces content maybe for other artists or maybe takes demos and does demos of content. And you can do that in Ableton Live. I think there's this myth, and we're going to talk in a future episode about the myth of the industry standard. I think there's this idea that says, hey, if you're going to be recording, you're going to be a real deal producer, real deal mix engineer, you got to learn Pro Tools. Well, if the space you're moving into uses Pro Tools and the artists you work with use Pro Tools, then yes, that's probably true. But I can think of countless individuals that produce all their music, mix their music in Ableton Live, and they're doing just fine, right? They got the money to pay the electric bills. So I think of my buddy illFactor. In fact, if you are wanting to learn how to produce your own music or to produce other people's music in Ableton Live, really, or any DAW for that matter, then check out beatacademy.com. My buddy Ill runs that. He shows you how to create your own music, how to get it placed in commercials, how to get it picked up by different artists, all sorts of really cool stuff. He's got great stuff going on over there. But, I think this is probably the most natural space for people using Ableton Live. Right, the podcast is from studio to stage. We're dealing with studio for a moment, but really, with a laptop computer, with Ableton Live standard, maybe even Ableton Live intro, you could start recording music. You could start producing your own music and music for other people, right? You don't need to go out and spend tons of money, get tons of plugins and tons of great gear. I also think of Graham Cochran, who does a lot of really cool stuff showing how you can use really affordable gear to create great sounds. Ill is kind of doing a similar thing, showing how you can reproduce songs in Ableton Live. He actually did a video not too long ago, where he showed how to reproduce a song in GarageBand, right? It's about the skills, right? It's about the talent. It's not about the software that you use. But if you're using Ableton Live, then you could have a great career as a producer, creating your own content in Ableton Live. And here's the other thing you could even do. You could sell your beats, sell your sounds that you create in Ableton Live. Let me tell you a bit of a secret here. So I've been creating my own patches and presets and selling them for quite a while. And I started, I guess, about 8 or 9 years ago. And here's what I did. So I kind of looked at the landscape, and I was specifically in the space of worship music, right? Worship music for churches. And there was no one that was selling patches, no one that was selling presets at that time. Most of the presets that you could go buy and packs you could find typically were for electronic music, because that's what most people were producing, in the context of using Ableton Live. If you wanted something that was, a better fit for worship stuff, you would go buy Omnisphere and use that. So I had this idea of, I want to serve the niche that I'm in, or the niche, if that's the way you say it. I want to serve the niche that I'm in. And so I'm going to get specific as possible. So one, I looked at and said, I know people are using Omnisphere. At that time, Mainstage wasn't as big as it is now. I know people are using Omnisphere. People are hosting that in, I believe Mainstage was around then, at least. People are hosting that in Ableton. Some people are using it in Mainstage. But I want to show people how capable Ableton Live is as a platform for keys. So I started creating my own sounds, my own patches, my own presets. But then I also said, okay, instead of people going, I need a really nice kind of ambient pad, and the way for me to do that is to buy Omnisphere, I'm going to create some presets that work for that. So at the time, the company I had was called Loops and Worship, created this product called Textures. And I remember the day that I released it, my wife and I were actually at Disney World in Florida. We were on our way back from a trip to go back to our home in Florida at the time. And I remember I released the product and did the blog post. I think I had some video content as well too. But I remember getting on a roller coaster and getting off and looking at my phone and going, wow, I made $1,000, right, from selling these patches and presets, which was pretty crazy. Now, from there, I've did some work with Ableton for Live 10 for presets and sounds you can find in Live 10 as well as additional packs. The company I used to work for, multitracks.com, I've got content available there as well too. I no longer make any money from that. The company owns all that content. And then obviously I have some content through from Studio Stage as well too. But what was really cool for me about those 10 years ago, I realized, hey, there's a need in the market. No one is filling this market. And so I kind of stepped in to do that for Ableton Live. Now, if I stay in that same market for a moment, here's the truth. No one still is really filling that space when it comes to Ableton Live. Right now, it's still people going, here's main stage sounds, here's Omnisphere sounds. But when it comes to sounds for Ableton Live key sounds, no one's really stepping into that space. And you'll see some more and hear some more from me about that in the future. But I kind of looked at it and went, hey, I've got these sounds that I'm using. They're serving my needs. I wonder if anyone else would want those as well too. Super easy to get up and running. You can try Gumroad. I'm trying to think of other sites. You could do a WordPress self-hosted thing, Shopify, Squarespace. The tech is not the thing that's going to hold you back. It's the fear that's going to hold you back from doing that. Side note, check out The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. If you find yourself in that place, I'm actually, I'll share a link to that book for you that you guys can check out. It's probably one of the most impactful, fantastic books when it comes to releasing your art and the life of a creative. Check out The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. But don't worry about the tech. That's super easy to solve. You've got a buddy down the street. She's going to help you figure that out. Don't worry about that piece. Just start doing it. But first way you can make money using Ableton Live as a producer, producing other people's music, producing your own music, or selling your own content, beats, presets, patches, that sort of thing. Second way you can make money using Ableton Live is as a musician. Now, a couple different ways this can work. Obviously, similar thing as before. You could be a producer who plays music and play all the parts on a record, right? But I'm talking about people that are on stage playing live music. So you get hired as a guitar player. You show up to the gig. You've got to be a fantastic guitar player, right? You've got to have the ability to play the part and play the part well. But imagine two guitar players show up for the gig. They're both equally talented. They're both great players. They know the parts. They play the parts really well. They play them with excellence. Two, they're great people, right? They're not annoying. They're really easy to carry a conversation with. Which of those two is going to get the gig, right? We're not sure yet. They're kind of on equal footing right now, but let's throw a wrench into this. That second individual that steps in to interview for the gig, he knows Ableton Live really well. He's a great guitar player. He's a great musician. He's a great hang, but he knows how to use Ableton Live to run tracks on stage. And he knows how to use Ableton Live to control lights. He knows how to use Ableton Live to control video content, to control the presets on the keyboardist's keyboard, who also happens to be the lead singer. Now put yourself in the situation of that lead singer. Again, two players, identical in skill, identical in people, personality skills, but that second player knows Ableton Live, knows how to control production elements, and knows how to serve you well as a lead vocalist. Who are you going to hire? Well, if you're smart, you're going to hire the second person. So here's the thing. Ableton Live can help you be a more well-rounded musician and can help you get and keep the gig, right? You could be a multi-purpose serving kind of musician that can step into a gig and yes, be an incredible guitar player, but then also play along with tracks, play along with stems, and move into connecting and controlling production elements. You know, I think of my buddy Adam when I think of this. So he's on stage as a guitar player, as an MD for an artist. But what that role means in the band that he's in is not just be an incredible guitar player, not just be an incredible MD and obviously a good hang, is he needs to learn how to and know how to use Ableton Live for tracks, for clicks in the band that he's in. This is going to help supplement, add to the experience, and serve the artist well. So Adam's finding himself in a situation where now if he were to step out of the gig, the person that needs to fill his spot or the person in the band that's going to take over his role, not only, again, needs to be a great guitar player, a great hang, they also need to know Ableton. So he's found himself in a situation where he's going to have a consistent gig because of the knowledge he needs, right? And if he steps into another gig, he now has this experience in something that really has nothing to do with guitar. But because he has spent time using Ableton Live, that's going to help him keep the gig that he currently has, or even get a new gig with, extra skill set. So when it comes to making money with Ableton Live, I think as a musician, Ableton Live is going to make you a multi-purpose, a well-rounded, very, very hireable, desirable musician when it comes to performing in kind of the live music space. So yes, you can make money as a producer with Ableton Live. You can make money as a musician. Now, in a second, I'm going to tell you how you can use Ableton Live to help you keep the gig even when you're not on stage. But first, I want to say thanks to my friends at Clark. So Clark sponsored season 1, and I'm thankful to say they're back sponsoring season 2 of the podcast as well. Here's the deal. The same way that Ableton Live gives you flexibility in your career, right? You need the flexibility to be a guitar player, to be a producer, to move into different spaces. Ableton Live gives you that flexibility. When you're looking to create a new room, build a new room, redo an existing performance space, whatever it needs, flexibility is key, right? Flexibility, one, in the space to be able to do multiple things, but then two, flexibility in the gear that you buy. You don't want to have to buy gear and have to rebuy it in 5 years because it's out of date, or because it doesn't allow you to grow into the space that you need it to allow you to grow. So when you're looking to redo a space, maybe you're a worship leader, music director, tech person at a church. Maybe you are in charge of a music venue in your city, a performance hall in your city, and you guys are going, wow, our soundboard's getting a little long in the tooth. It's time to replace this. Or you're building a brand new space or need to redo a space. Or maybe the space you currently have, you find yourself in that situation where you go, we bought new gear. It's 5 years later. Now we need to buy new gear because it's out of date. I would encourage you to talk to my friends at Clark, right? Clark is a AV installer, an AV integrator. And what that means is they're going to come in and help you find the gear that's going to serve your needs in your space really well. Best part of all that, they know what they're talking about. They have tons of experience. So they're going to come in and they're going to help you find the gear that's best for you. That's not going to, again, mean that you need to upgrade 5 years later because you're trying to do something new. It's going to be flexible. It's going to be modular, and it's going to fit your budget and your space well. So again, if you find yourself in that situation where you're looking to build a new room, a new performance space, or redoing an existing space, I want to encourage you to reach out to my friends at Clark. The way you can get in contact with them is head to clark.is. That's clark.is, just to start the conversation. They're great folks. I've known a lot of them since college, went to college with them. They ran sound for our band, did lights for our band. Great folks. I would encourage you to reach out to them, start the conversation, and they're going to find the gear and the space and the way it needs to be set up that's going to serve you really well. So again, start the conversation with them by heading to clark.is. That's clark.is, and let them know that Will sent you. I want to tell you about my friend Alex. So Alex finds himself in a situation where he's on stage as a keyboardist playing with an artist. He had been traveling with the artist for quite a while. He's a fantastic keys player, great guy. The artist, though, decided to change their mind on the structure and makeup of the band. So what that typically would mean is Alex finds himself out of a gig, right? So, we're changing the structure of the band. You're in the old band, bringing the new band in, you're out. You lost the gig. But here's what Alex was able to do. Because he found himself in that situation where, as a musician, he wasn't just a great musician, he also knew Ableton really well. He was able to pivot from the role of being a musician to now being what's called a playback tech. Now, if you're not familiar with what a playback tech is, what a playback tech does, let's boil it down to a really simple kind of formula. They press spacebar, right? Now, it's more glorious than that sometimes. It's less glorious than that sometimes. But essentially what a playback tech does is they manage the role of using clicks, tracks for the band, typically off stage. If the band flows, if the artist goes somewhere else, then they follow the artist. It's basically meant to be kind of the fifth Beatle, the person that helps use and implement tracks in the band. Now, a lot of bigger artists, the band's made up of incredible musicians. they don't know how to use Ableton Live, or they need to focus on what's happening on stage. And if there's a big enough budget, then they say, let's hire someone to do playback. Oftentimes that playback tech needs to also then know how to control keyboards or control drum gear or guitar gear to help kind of synchronize the tracks with production elements, all sorts of things like that. But being a playback tech, again, this opens up a whole new revenue stream for you. It's a great solution, a great fit if you're a musician on stage. Again, you find yourself like my buddy Alex and you're out of a gig suddenly, you can pivot and say, hey, I know the songs, I know the content well, I know Ableton Live well, why don't I be the playback tech? You already know I'm a good hang. I'm just going to step off stage and kind of serve the artist, serve the moment, serve the music in a different way. And he was able to do that. And there's so many spaces that this can exist. It doesn't just have to be a major artist that's touring arenas. It could be Broadway shows. It could be musicals. It could be in a church setting. I just recently posted a video of my buddy J-Mix at a church in Charlotte, North Carolina called Elevation. And he travels with kind of the artist side of that, which is elevation music. And in the video, we walk through his rig showing how he's kind of serving the musicians, the worship leaders on stage as a playback tech. He's giving them the freedom to play, to have the flexibility to repeat things, jump around, and he's off stage. And he's also doing some other stuff and doing backline, but he's off stage kind of serving the music as a playback tech. So again, I think when it comes to ways to make money with Ableton Live, becoming a playback tech is a fantastic solution, fantastic way to do that. So if you want to make money with Ableton Live, you could look at becoming a producer, producing other people's content, your own content, even sharing and selling your sounds and presets and beats. 2, you could use Ableton Live to make you a more well-rounded, hireable musician. 3, you could pivot from being a musician or tech to being a playback tech and using Ableton offstage. And then 4th and finally, and by no means is this an exhaustive list of how you can make money with Ableton Live, but just 4 specific roles I thought of and friends that I know that are serving in these roles or myself serving in these roles. 4th way is as an educator. Particularly in the role of higher ed, right? If you are teaching music at a college, at a university, could be a community college, could be a 4-year accredited university, in a higher ed kind of situation, teaching music in any form or fashion, knowing Ableton Live will benefit you greatly. I think of my buddy Graham, that's a certified trainer. He is, in a music college kind of situation, university. Here's what you're able to do. Yes, you're able to teach the instrument that you teach. Maybe you're a really well-accomplished piano player. Maybe you're a vocal instructor. But if you know Ableton Live, you're able to say, hey, let's create an electronic music program. That's going to attract more students to your school. It's going to maybe get people that are on the edge of like, I don't know if I want to be a music educator. I'm not sure. I don't know that this music performance degree is going to serve me well, but you could suddenly say, hey, we're going to start a music program here. We're going to show you how to create and record your own content in Ableton Live. We'll show you how to perform on stage with Ableton Live. You're going to get more students. You're going to retain more students at your university. And guess what your bosses are going to look at and say, hey, what Will was able to do was able to keep us money and get us more money. Therefore, we want to keep Will around and we want to pay him more. Now, that is granted, if you're in a healthy situation and people are paying attention, but being an educator in a higher ed situation, this is going to benefit you really, really well. Now, it doesn't just have to be college, right? I think of my buddy Ray, that is a high school band teacher, instructor, and he kind of looked at the drum line and the marching band setup that they had and said, hey, let's take this to the next level and let's start integrating some electronics. Let's do sound effects. Let's do some pre-recorded stuff as we walk onto stage, this kind of pre-roll thing. Let's have, instead of someone playing marimba, let's give them a mallet station and have them control synth parts with their mallets. Let's have someone on a keyboard playing synth parts, and let's use Ableton Live to do all of that. So again, Ray has made himself incredibly valuable because he's not just teaching the pit. He's not just teaching a drum line how to do specific parts. He is saying, I'm going to also integrate electronics into this situation. I'm going to show my students how they can do really cool stuff with Ableton Live. He's elevating the program by allowing them to compete at really high levels and do really cool things that they couldn't do without electronics. And again, it's helping him get and keep the gig, even as an educator. Now, if you find yourself in the situation where you're currently a teacher in some form or fashion, or maybe you're getting your music education degree now, you're going to move into that space, I want to encourage you to consider becoming an Ableton Live certified trainer. Now, in last week's episode, I talked about what that means if you should become a certified trainer. So I've included the link to that in the show notes. So check that out to see if that's a right fit for you. But I think that's really going to benefit you, right? It's really going to serve you well because, again, it gives you a badge of honor. It shows you know what you're talking about. It shows that you have an incredible teaching ability. And as schools are looking at people to hire, again, think of my buddy Ray. They say we need someone to come in and teach and train our pit. But we see that this person knows how to use electronics and Ableton Live. They're a certified trainer. This person isn't. They're equal, but this person has that extra skill set. They're going to end up getting that gig in that case. So consider becoming a certified trainer. Now, what do you do if you're listening to all this and you go, this sounds amazing, right? I want to make my living primarily or mostly from performing on stage, from producing music, from using Ableton Live. How do I learn how to use Ableton Live on stage? How do I learn to perform like the pros using Ableton Live on stage so that I can get and keep the gig? I want to encourage you to check out something called Playback Academy. Playback Academy is a 2-day hands-on intensive training that I'm hosting here in Austin, Texas, November 8th and 9th. If you're listening to this after the fact, November 8th and 9th, 2019. At the time you're listening to this, registration is still open. We only have 20 spots available, and we already have a few people registered. It's going to continue to go quickly. Here's the thing that's unique about Playback Academy. If you find yourself in the place where you're a musician, you want to be a playback tech, this is all about that. It's all about using Ableton Live on stage, performing with Ableton Live. We talk about 3 things: using Ableton in a playback situation, clicks and tracks with a band or solo artist. 2, using Ableton Live as a keyboardist, creating a virtual keys rig, a hybrid virtual keys rig, using hardware and software at the same time. And then 3, it's about using Ableton Live to connect and control almost anything: lights, video, guitar pedals, keyboards, you name it. We're going to talk about how to control it. And here's what's unique about it. It's not just me teaching the same material that I pre-record in videos. It's me teaching, and then it's you applying. And I'm going to be there to make sure you're applying it correctly and you're getting it. I'll be there to ask questions. You'll have the diversity of experiences of people that are there with you that are going to be able to speak into what you're doing and say, oh, why don't you try it this way? Why don't you try it that way? But then what's really cool is it's going to be hands-on. We have tons of gear there that you're going to be able to apply the knowledge you just learned. You're going to learn and make sure you're doing it right, grow your skill set. And again, it's going to help you get and keep the gig. Now, if you are interested in checking out Playback Academy, I encourage you to head to playbackacademy.com where you can register for that. Again, 2 days, hands-on intensive training that's going to help you know you're doing it right, grow your skill set, and help you get and keep the gig. So again, that is playbackacademy.com. The link is in the show notes. Click that, head over there and register. We'd love to see you in Austin, Texas, November 8th and 9th. Now, finally, how do you make money with Ableton Live? Again, endless possibilities here. The 4 we talked about is as a producer, producing your own music, someone else's music. Secondly is becoming a well-rounded, hireable, desirable musician and a live performance space, knowing Ableton Live as well. 2, 3 is becoming a playback tech, so you can either pivot off stage to being a playback tech or pivot from being a front of house engineer to also being a playback tech as well too. Again, makes you well-rounded in the space of live performance. And then 4th and finally, as an educator, right? And there's so much stuff that's not included in this episode that we could talk about. Here's what I'd love to know. How are you making money with Ableton Live? What role are you in? What career field are you in? And is Ableton Live helping serve you and helping you make money? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you how you're using Ableton Live to make money. Now, if you enjoyed this episode or other episodes, do me a favor, hit like, hit share it with your friends, let them know. Leave us a review on iTunes, leave a comment and let us know. Would love to hear from you if you're enjoying this show. Thank you guys so much for listening to not just this episode, but all the different episodes we have. If you want to go back and listen to season 1, feel free to do that anytime. You can find us almost anywhere that podcasts can be found. But thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next Monday here on the From Studio to Stage podcast. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.